The evening air was crisp, carrying the scent of expensive perfume and blooming jasmine from the country club gardens. The crowd buzzed with that specific manic energy that always accompanies the end of a very expensive wedding. Guests were lining up along the edges of the wide, sweeping cobblestone driveway, holding sparklers that hissed and popped in the twilight. I stood far back, near the dark green valet podium, half hidden behind a massive stone pillar. I just watched. My father was at the front of the line, his chest puffed out so far he looked like he might burst the buttons on his tuxedo. He was standing right next to General Vance, casually laughing as if they had been best friends for decades. My mother was hovering just behind them, dabbing her dry eyes with a lace handkerchief, playing the role of the overwhelmed, joyful mother of the bride to absolute perfection. Then the heavy oak doors of the country club swung open. The crowd erupted into cheers. Chloe and David stepped out, holding hands. Chloe looked radiant, her white dress catching the light of the sparklers. David looked formidable, a towering presence in his dark navy uniform, adorned with gold stripes and rows of ribbons that gleamed in the dim light. They walked slowly down the steps, smiling, waving, playing to the crowd. It was a picture-perfect moment, a moment my parents had probably spent $50,000 to orchestrate. The vintage Rolls-Royce pulled up to the curb, its engine purring softly. The driver stepped out to open the back door. But as David and Chloe reached the bottom of the steps, they didn't get straight into the car. Instead, David paused. He turned to face his commanding officers, who were gathered in a loose semicircle near my parents. It was a formal military tradition, a final moment of respect between a newlywed officer and his superiors before departing. General Vance stepped forward, extending a hand to David. They shook hands warmly, the general clapping David on the shoulder. "Congratulations, Lieutenant Commander." General Vance's deep, booming voice carried easily over the crackling sparklers. "You've got a beautiful bride and a bright future ahead of you. Have a safe honeymoon." "Thank you, sir. It means the world that you came," David replied, his tone filled with absolute reverence. My father couldn't resist the opportunity. He stepped right into the middle of the exchange, beaming. "General Vance, we are just so honored to have you here. It really solidifies what a momentous occasion this is for our family. We are so proud to welcome a man of David's caliber into our ranks." General Vance offered my father a polite, tight-lipped smile. "He's a fine officer, Richard. You should be proud." The general turned away, signaling that the conversation was over. He began to walk toward his own waiting vehicle, escorted by 2 junior officers. His path took him straight down the edge of the driveway, away from the bright lights and the cheering crowd, moving directly toward the shadowed valet stand where I was standing. I didn't move. I kept my hands shoved deep in my pockets, my back pressed against the cold stone pillar. I just wanted him to walk past me so I could finally leave. But as the general got within 10 feet of me, he stopped. He didn't just pause. He stopped completely dead in his tracks. The 2 junior officers walking with him bumped into each other, surprised by his sudden halt. General Vance narrowed his eyes, squinting into the shadows. The polite ceremonial smile vanished from his face, replaced by a look of profound, absolute shock. The crowd nearest to him noticed the sudden shift in energy. The cheering died down slightly. My father, always desperate to ensure everything went perfectly, hurried over, his face flushed with concern. "General," my father asked, his voice tight, "is everything all right? Is there a problem with your car?" General Vance ignored my father completely. He didn't even look at him. His eyes were locked entirely on me. Slowly, the general took 2 steps closer, stepping out of the bright glow of the driveway and into the dim light of the valet area. He stared at my face, looking me up and down, as if trying to comprehend how I could possibly be standing there. "Mark," the general said. His voice wasn't loud, but in the sudden, spreading silence of the crowd, it sounded like a gunshot. My heart slammed against my ribs. I froze. I had never met General Vance face to face. Our interactions had strictly been through heavily encrypted, voice-altered digital channels during massive international security crises. But my real file, crossed his desk. He knew my name. He knew my face. My father let out a nervous, high-pitched laugh. He stepped between me and the general, holding his hands up defensively. "Oh, General, I am so sorry. Please excuse him. That's just my son, Mark. He tends to skulk around in the background. Mark, step back, you're in the general's way. General Vance finally looked at my father. The look he gave him was so cold, so terrifyingly severe, that my father actually took a physical step backward. Your son? General Vance asked, his voice dropping to a dangerous, quiet register. Yes, my mother chimed in, rushing over, sensing the tension and trying to smooth it over with her fake, sugary tone. He's Chloe's older brother. He works in IT support, General. He fixes computers. Nothing you need to concern yourself with. David is the real star today. The general looked from my mother to my father, a look of utter disgust settling over his hardened features. He slowly shook his head, as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Then, General Vance turned his back on my parents. He walked directly up to me, closing the distance until he was standing just 2 feet away. The entire driveway was dead silent now. The sparklers were burning out. Every single eye in the crowd, including Chloe and David, who had walked over from the car, was locked on us. General Vance stood up incredibly straight. He didn't smile. He looked me directly in the eyes, his expression filled with a gravity and a respect that I had never, ever received from anyone in my entire life. Sir, General Vance said, his booming voice echoing off the stone walls of the country club. I had absolutely no idea you were related to the bride. I was not briefed on this connection. I swallowed hard. It's a private matter, General. Understood, he nodded sharply. Then he took a deep breath, and he spoke loud enough for every single person within 50 feet to hear every single word. I just want to take this opportunity to thank you, personally. If it wasn't for the emergency ghost network your team deployed during that extraction in Kabul last month, I would have lost 2 Blackhawks and 30 of my best men. They came home to their families because of you. We owe you a debt we can never repay. The silence that fell over the country club was absolute. It was a suffocating, heavy silence. You could have heard a pin drop on the concrete. I looked past the general. My father's jaw had literally dropped open. His face was entirely drained of color, making him look pale and sickly under the outdoor lights. My mother was clutching her chest, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, completely unable to process the words she had just heard. Fixes computers? IT support? A deadbeat? The words of my uncle from the night before seemed to hang in the air, suddenly exposed as the most pathetic, humiliating joke in the world. I looked at Chloe, the golden child, the sister who had let me be the punching bag for our entire lives. She was staring at me with wide, terrified eyes, realizing in real time that the brother she had always looked down on was a ghost holding up the sky for the United States military. Then the crowd parted slightly. David stepped forward. David, the golden boy, the highly decorated Navy officer, the man my family worshipped. He looked at General Vance, absorbing the absolute magnitude of what the general had just said. David knew exactly what the Kabul extraction was. Every officer in the military knew about that absolute miracle of an operation. David looked at me. The arrogant confidence he usually carried was completely gone. In its place was a look of pure, unadulterated awe. He realized that the quiet, introverted guy he had allowed his new family to mock was a man who operated on a level of national security he could barely even fathom. David didn't say a word. He didn't need to. He snapped his heels together, the sound sharp and crisp in the quiet night. He stood at rigid attention, squared his shoulders, raised his hand, and delivered a perfect, deeply respectful salute. Directly to me. Seeing a lieutenant commander salute a civilian in a cheap gray suit broke my parents' brains. David, what are you doing? My father whispered, his voice trembling, his world completely collapsing around him. He's just Mark. David didn't lower his hand. He kept his eyes locked on mine. Thank you for your service, sir, David said, his voice ringing out clear and loud. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I didn't say, I told you so. I didn't need to. The universe had just delivered the most absolute, devastating revenge imaginable, and I didn't even have to lift a finger. I slowly returned David's nod. I looked at the general. Thank you, General. Have a good evening. You too, Mark, the general said softly. At that exact moment, the valet pulled my beat-up 6-year-old sedan up to the curb. The engine rattled slightly as it idled. It was the perfect poetic contrast to everything my parents valued. I didn't say goodbye to my mother. I didn't say goodbye to my father. I didn't say a single word to my sister. I just turned my back on all of them, opened the door to my car, got in and drove away. As I pulled out of the country club gates, I looked in my rearview mirror one last time. They were all just standing there in the driveway. A group of wealthy, arrogant people frozen in place, utterly destroyed by the truth. The fallout was exactly as you would expect. My phone started blowing up about 3 hours later. First it was a text from Chloe. *Mark, please call me. We need to talk. I had no idea. I deleted it. Then came the voicemails from my father. The tone had completely changed. The arrogant, booming patriarch was gone. In his place was a frantic, desperate man begging for a chance to understand. *Mark, son, please pick up. General Vance told us a little bit about your clearance. We are just so shocked. We want to take you to dinner. We want to celebrate you. I didn't answer. I blocked his number. I blocked my mother's number. I blocked my uncle. I blocked every single person who had sat in that rehearsal dinner and laughed at me. I realized something profound as I sat in my quiet apartment that night, drinking a glass of cheap tap water. Respect shouldn't be a transaction. You shouldn't have to be a secret, high-level government asset to be treated with basic dignity by the people who share your blood. If they couldn't love me when they thought I was a nobody, they absolutely did not deserve to know me when they found out I was somebody. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't screaming, fighting, or throwing insults back at the people who hurt you. It isn't stooping to their level. The greatest revenge is letting their own ignorance expose them. It's letting the truth ring out so loud that it shatters their reality. And then, you just walk away. You leave them standing in the mess of their own making, and you move forward, knowing your own worth, never looking back.